Item 3, we're going to do a review of the Entrepreneurship Development Coordinator measurable outcomes. Christine?
So Andrew's 91-week contract is soon to come to an end. And part of the reporting that we will do for the Rural Economic Development of OMAFRA, the same ministry that Kent works for, this was part of the original grant to clearly outline all the measurables, and I'm not going to go through them all. I hope you've had a chance to look at it. There have been significant outcomes to date since Andrew joined us in May of 2014. And interestingly enough, today we received an offer to purchase 4 acres in the industrial park, pending funding. And apparently there's a second offer for purchase coming in that Andrew's working on negotiating as well. So I don't know if any of you have any questions about the outcomes in the list. There's been a lot of new job creation. He's been working one-on-one with a lot of businesses and putting some businesses together, someone who's looking to invest and someone who's looking for an investor. He's made a few marriages that way as well. The other thing that I've done here is we had discussed this at our last strategic planning. I did put together a draft of what a new position might look like for a community development manager and a recreation manager. Now the salary, we've run that, I've based what's in your package on 2 economic development ads that I've spotted recently in the paper in November and December. One for Pembroke and one for South Dundas, which is down on the St. Lawrence, a small rural municipality. We have sent that figure over to Bruce Beakley to get his opinion on it vis-a-vis pay equity. But I think, it may be about $5,000 shy, but I think it's certainly in the ballpark. So I wanted to put that together for you to let you know, from my point of view, what this person might be able to do and how we might be able to combine these 2 functions. So it would be a community development manager, and then the recreation manager would look after our swim program and the parks and eventually the visitor center, playground inspections, and all kinds of stuff that we have no one to look after right now. So that's why that's in there for further conversation when we get down into strategic planning. So that's pretty much it for my overview.
Okay, Christine, this position was partially funded by some support we got somewhere.
We had 50% grant funding of 91 weeks of salary.
Right, and is there any opportunities moving forward to catch something like that?
No. The RED program is meant to allow small municipalities like ours, rural economic development, to dip their toe in the water and see if this is something they would want to move forward and create a full-time position.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody have any more questions on this? So you're good? Okay. Councillor Jackson?
I guess for the recreation part of it, does it include or does it not include the recreation facilities?
Well, that's a question for you folks. I believe during the last strategic planning, Councillor, we had mentioned that at the beginning, that person could be a liaison between the various recreation associations to prevent something like what happened with Hockeyville, the craft, where Beachburg applied and Cobden applied, and they didn't know they had both applied, and they canceled each other out, and they didn't get anywhere with it. So if we had someone in this kind of a manager position, they'd be able to liaise with those groups to look at grant funding and look at applications to make sure that there was more awareness of not competing with each other that way. And then eventually, in time, whatever direction council wishes that person to take.
Are you going to include that as part of the duties of the recreation?
I think in here, if I'm not mistaken, Yeah, the second last bullet point, coordinate and correspond, various groups, local recreation associations, and come back to council with recommendations. And that would a lot of this it wouldn't all be all of these things at once. It would be growing into this position as there were requirements, because all of the recreation associations function quite differently.
Yes, they do.
Okay, are we moving on, or further questions?
Come on up.
So now we got a delegation, Chella Bracken, Local Immigration Partnership. Welcome, Chella.
Thank you so much.
Now, just give me 1 minute to get you going here. What excitement has to do that? Oh.
Right down.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. You were challenged. There we go. Now, are you okay to get in here and find?
That's what I need.
Oh. That looks like you?
No.
Okay. There we are. It just wasn't in. And where are you?
Top first one.
Could we have some music, Andrew, while we're waiting?
Oh, that was too good. Thank you so much, Christine. Okay, thank you so much for setting me up there, and thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Mayor and councillors for having me today. Such a pleasure to be here in the Whitewater region. I've grown to love this area working here in Renfrew County over the last near 5 years. We're heading in the last quarter of our 5th year in the project, and I've attended quite a few economic development summits, meetings, opportunities where folks like yourselves were represented, and I must say the Whitewater brand speaks for itself. That video is such an accomplishment, and I really, want to commend this group on really developing such a wonderful brand. There's no other municipality in Renfrew County that speaks so clearly as to who you are. So thank you so much for the invitation, or the welcoming to be here. And the purpose of my presentation today is really just so you can get to know me a little bit and what we're up to at the project, and certainly how we can sort of break apart some of the things that Kent talked about this morning. I worked with Kent quite closely throughout the project, and his colleagues at OMAFRA. They're one of our main supporters, and I hope to sort of give you some real tools and support to be able to build some of this community economic development platform here. So, our project is called the Local Immigration Partnership of Renfrew and Lanark. This was a name given to us by the Federal Department of Immigration Canada, and this department began establishing these projects as early as 2008 in Canada. They started off in Ontario as a pilot, and it was so successful that they decided to branch it out across the nation 2 years ago. So we got in when it was still an Ontario initiative, and we are housed by Algonquin College, so they are a parent company, and they do all of the sort of check writing and support for our office and infrastructure. But it's also beneficial because we do have the entire county of Lanark to support as well, and they have a campus in Perth there. So, and we have great ties with Ottawa as well, which is always a good thing to have. So our organization, the name says it all. We're local in context. We work in the immigration sector, and we're partnership-based. So we're not a client service provider. We're a collaborator of different organizations and stakeholders to come to better settlement outcomes for Canadians, new Canadians. And we work with organizations across the county, both counties, and our primary is Algonquin College, as I mentioned. And specifically, we work with Employment Ontario Network. So in Renfrew County, there are several locations where individuals can acquire information about how to find a job, how to write a resume, how to do a better interview, and seek employment and training. So we actually are housed right in the Pembroke office on Lake Street with the Employment Ontario office there, but we work with the network in Renfrew and Lanark. In Lanark County, there's a group called the Planning Council for Children, Family, and Youth, and they are represented at our table. And we also recently joined the Renfrew County Youth Network, which they don't have a logo yet, but they'd be up here if we did. And certainly sort of the same idea. It's a conglomerate of executive directors that represent organizations that serve youth, families, from a ministry funding standpoint, and we get together to talk about these things. So Canadian Career Academy is one of our Lanark Employment Ontario offices. We also work directly with the Renfrew County District School Board. Our public board is the only ESL service provider in the area, so English as a second language is one of the core services that new Canadians seek out upon arrival. They want to get to know English as quickly as possible so they can fit right into the workforce. And we have classes running right now in Pembroke, Petawawa, and Deep River, and we can set new ones up based on need. We also work with one of our primary employers in the region. Canadian Nuclear Laboratories is a huge player, mostly because they hire so frequently from abroad. The skill set is so unique in nuclear research and development that we know that we work directly with the Human Resource Department there, and they've really told us the story of the struggle of retention, having folks stay once they've been hired into a skilled position there. One of our founding partners is the OPP, and really just as a primary service to let new Canadians know of the safety and security and well-being that is possible here, as that varies country to country. And the library system is also a huge partner of ours because there are ground level workers. There are people who take on the multicultural programming, carry it out for children and families that attend their programs, and we are represented by the Pembroke Public Library through Margaret Mao, but every library in Renfrew County sits at another table that we support. In the town of Renfrew, we work directly with their Parks and Recreation Manager, so that person you're looking to hire in the future, we work directly with that the township, the town of Renfrew, to be able to produce some great ideas and opportunities for the municipality to become involved in welcoming communities. And we have a municipality that sits at our table in Lanark, Mississippi Mills. We have the CAO represented there. They have really great forward thinking about their arts culture and how that really supports their economics. So it's a great connection for us. And of course, we're supported by our Ontario Ministry of Citizenship, Immigration, and International Trade, who is undergoing a great deal of work right now with supporting Syrian refugees coming to the area. So we are greatly involved with them, and as well the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, but they are not a formal partner. They're a support resource agent. And we love to touch into the social services sector, and we do that through the Bernadette McCann House for Women. And one of the great opportunities that emerged from working with these folks is the acquirement of free interpretation services for anyone who's been victimized. So we can actually hire an interpreter to help in a medical interview or in a lawyer's meeting for any person that does not speak fluent English and would need to understand important documents. And in Lanark, our ESL and settlement service provider is the T.R. Leger School of Adult Continuing Education. And this branch of the T.R. Leger School is located in Almont, which is also Mississippi Mills. And they are the sole settlement service provider in the region that we serve. And I'll expand a little bit about what settlement services are. Settlement services are a brick-and-mortar location where a new Canadian who has permanent resident status could walk in and receive a caseworker-type service, similar to an employment counselor. You go in, you talk about your family situation, what are the gaps, what are the needs, I need immunizations for my children, I have no idea where to go, I need a job, what are the resources? It's sort of a person to help answer those questions. So we don't have those services in Renfrew County, and one of the big initiatives we've been taking on for the last 4 years is to lobby for that type of funding here. But we've also done a really good job at taxing the existing assets in the community to support in the ways they already do at such a high level, just being able to connect those people to a more unique need for a new Canadian. And as Kent mentioned in his presentation, there's a local labor market planning group in Renfrew County that's called the Labor Market Group of Renfrew and Lanark. And those guys work directly with me. They sit right next door to me in my office, and they are the core drivers of having this funding landing for the immigration portfolio. They just released their annual labor market planning report that probably went out to Christine, but the website is renfrewlanark.com, and that document contains a great deal of information about the current labor market of the area and how there's some emerging trends and skills that are currently in need. And then lastly, of course, we work with employers in all sorts of ways, and one of the ways is through the Chambers of Commerce, and we do work with a variety of Chambers of Commerce, but the one who holds the seat at our steering table is the Upper Ottawa Valley through Lorraine Mackenzie. So as I mentioned, our purpose is to strengthen local communities in order to successfully receive and retain new Canadians, and we've done that in a variety of ways over the last 4.5 years. Most recently, we hosted a festival in partnership with the municipality in Madawaska Valley called Eat, Play, Live, Celebrating Renfrew County. And this was a really fun event. We had it at the waterfront, and we had music and children's entertainment and a street-long expose of ethnic food providers. And people could go and have samples and exchange their ticket for a few samples. So it was a really great day of sharing, and that was all as a result of a partnership with the municipality. We also have hosted a variety of training opportunities, all the way from a sector-specific in the healthcare division, all the way up to any average community member that would like to learn more about better communications across cultures. It's always a good thing to understand each other in a great way and to share back and forth, as cultural understanding is a two-way street. We do lots of fun things too, and a lot of it surrounds food. We have a little road show we call the International Food Festival, and any interested community that has a couple of ethnic food providers, whether they're home-based or restaurant-based, we help host a little mini festival for all your local people to find out what food is available and get to know some of the families that prepare it. In Renfrew, we also hosted Celebrating Diversity, where we got together with other volunteers and other agencies that support marginalized groups like the LGBT community, persons with a disability, children suffering with disease. All these sorts of folks got together, and we produced a beautiful piece of theater that was local monologues of individual stories and really getting to know and sharing with each other. And then, of course, we had a conference back in the beginning of the project where OMAFRA came and supported us through the delivery of their indicator tool that Kent mentioned specifically in his presentation. It's called Community Attractiveness Indicators for Newcomer and Youth. And this is actually a ranking of how you land in certain areas of how attractive you are to new Canadians and to youth. And there's such similarities between newcomers and youth that they package them together. So when we do work towards attracting new Canadians, it has a double-edged effect to youth as well. And that was brought to us by OMAFRA. And then, of course, one of our biggest accomplishments is the ongoing development and execution of our online resource guide. It's a website, but the whole purpose of this website is to provide the top 15 answers to the top 15 questions that people have when they're settling in the area. How do I find a job? How do I get a doctor? How do I sign my kid up for school? All those questions are answered on our website and the service providers that you would need to connect with, whether you were from Winnipeg or India, to find those answers. And our URL is renfrewcountywelcomesyou.com. So I hope you can check it out after today. So one of the big reasons why I'm here today is to present an opportunity for you based on the current demographic spread of your population. So this pie chart here really it's a lot of information, but essentially what you're looking at is the spread of numbers of individuals by age group. So I've broken it down for you here on the next slide. So right now in 2015, and this is all data that we acquired through OMAFRA, so Kent's not telling a lie when he says he'll support anyone looking for good data. We know that roughly 59% of your population are working age right now. So that means anyone 20 to 65, it doesn't matter the type of job they're in or whether they're working or not, 60% or so are available to work. 18% are seniors and 24% are youth, which do include children and toddlers. So this spread is actually incredibly healthy. Your youth population is greater than your senior population, and your working class is the majority, which is what we want. But then when we look forward 10 years, things change a little bit. We drop to 51% of your population being of the age to work. This doesn't mean that they're all working. And 28% will be seniors. This is a little bit conservative considering other communities. We're seeing a doubling. So it's not quite doubling here, which is good news. And 21% are youth. And the asterisk you're seeing there is just to denote that we're using normal birth rates. We couldn't possibly know how many children will be born here in the next 10 years, but averages say we're going to land around the same value as we are now in youth, just a little lower. But what this means for us in terms of the labor market participation, which locally is about 53%. So every 2 adults working age in a household, only 1 is working. That's roughly the count right now. But when you extrapolate for that value and you look forward, there will be 120 less workers to fill 650 jobs. So we're going in the opposite way when in terms of labor when the demand is rising. So the Globe and Mail has a really great website, and this graphic was pulled from them to describe how this movement of the bubble of the population moving into retirement will affect the local sort of call on CPP and OAS. In 1971, there was about, this is the sweet era, 6.6 individuals working for every senior drawing on the system. So we were building up massive capital at the federal level. And then in 2012, this changed to about 4.2 individuals working for every senior claiming on the system. And with normal conservative population growth rates, in 2036, it's expected to be just over 2 people earning for every person claiming. So right now in Whitewater region, it is at that value, just over 2. And then when we look forward 10 years, it actually drops down to 1.2. So it's closer to 1-to-1, which is, something to think about for sure. So how this affects Canada and sort of provides an example of how this will affect everyone locally and probably in a deeper way in rural zones is described here in this graphic. So this is pulled from an article that's called People Without Jobs, Jobs Without People, which is Canada's future, unless we do a really good job at welcoming. And the gray bar that you're seeing here above the 0 line is a surplus of unskilled labor. So right now we call that unemployment. Our unemployment rate is nearly filled with individuals who are unskilled, so they have entry-level positions available to them. And the local ministries, the Ontario ministries, have done an incredible job at trying to flip those individuals from unskilled to skilled. And specifically programs like the Targeted Initiative for Older Workers, Second Career, Career Focus, Skills Link, to name a few. These are active programs that are going on in the region today to try and build skills in that gray bar in order to flip those individuals into the red bar, which is the deepest deficit of skilled labor that Canada may experience under normal population growth. So if we do a poor job at attracting, it'll deepen even further, but if we do a good job, it might creep up a little bit. But the basic forecast is looking at about over 1 million people or jobs without people in Canada. And even if we flip every unskilled person into that red bar and have that position filled by new training and new opportunities, we're still left with the black bar, which is the net deficit. So this is a national issue. This is not unique to Whitewater. It's not unique to Renfrew County. However, what this denotes is that we will be competing We will be competing for the best and the brightest across the country and in all developed countries of the world that were part of the war, period. So we are here today to talk about how we can build some capacity into that black bar. And one of the ways we can do that, which was described by Kent in his slides, is to welcome newcomers. And specifically, when I'm talking about newcomers, we're speaking about individuals that were not Canadian-born. That doesn't mean they're brand new from India or from China, but they could have been living in Toronto for a period of time, or Montreal, and they have what we call a secondary migration to an opportunity in a rural zone or a smaller city. But the great news is that most new Canadians come with exactly what we're looking for. Education and skills. 2/3 arrive already educated at the post-secondary level, and once those folks arrive, they want to connect themselves immediately at the best way possible to the Canadian workforce, and they retrain. More than half continue their education to be able to be the best connection for the Canadian workforce. And I listened very carefully about the talks about entrepreneurial activities going on here in this municipality, and that is exactly what new Canadians offer. One of the most challenging processes to immigration in today's world is credential assessment. So you'll have an accountant who's been working in Poland for years as an accountant, and they can't acquire credentials here without going through the entire 4-year process of accounting degree and UFI exams and CA certification. So what they do is they open firms and they hire accountants that already have that certification, and they run those businesses from a managerial perspective instead of a practitioner. So we know that new Canadians are highly entrepreneurial, and they buy businesses all the time. We have very direct examples locally of businesses that went for sale and basically were picked up by being promoted in the Chinese newcomer magazine that's available at Pearson Airport. All of these individuals arrived at these opportunities through the promotion of these businesses for sale through outside the community efforts. We also know that there's a possibility for increased richness to the social fabric here with introduction of new cultures. We would love to share about the history and heritage of this region with other places in the world and back and forth. But we also know that new Canadians don't come alone. They come ready to work, of working age, and with kids. And those kids take seats in our schools and keep our public services funded at the levels we're used to. And they also bring senior citizens that help volunteer in the communities and become vibrant members. But we also have evidence that the new Canadians bring innovation and competitive advantage over and above an individual born in Canada. And specifically, there are examples of organizations right now in this area that have hired folks that speak Mandarin, and now they can access Chinese markets for the local players. So lots of opportunities that new Canadians do bring. But the bottom line is that we can work together to attract, integrate, and retain new Canadians in order to sustain our economy, our public services, and the community's vitality. But the big question is how, and Mr. Mayor, you had that question earlier today. How do we promote? How do we make this happen? And it is absolutely critical for rural communities to plan and act based on assets that already exist and identify opportunities for welcoming initiatives. And this is my role. This is how I would like to support you in this ongoing process. Because the most crucial element for any person coming from outside the region is the perception of a welcoming community. When individuals, newcomers, it's threaded through the evidence that we receive, is that when newcomers feel welcomed and integrated socially, they have friends, they have a network, they will abort better economic opportunities to retain that community feel. And that's where we can excel. So this graphic here is my second last slide, and it really just illustrates exactly what Kent described in his Community Development 101. When you look at branding and you develop welcoming community initiatives that are built throughout your action plan, this can only increase your ability to attract, retain, integrate, and eventually sustain. And this, it's lots of information here, but the idea is that the smallest investment today grows and grows and grows to a tree in the future. So my purpose for being here today is not to ask for anything of you but your time for a meeting. I am here at your disposal. I have an expertise in strategic planning for community development in the immigration sector and beyond, and I am at your disposal. I am 100% here to support the individual municipalities of this county in order to be the strongest version of ourselves possible so that we can sustain the already amazing communities we're living in today. So thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to establishing a relationship with someone. Thank you.
Thank you as well, Chella. Anybody have any questions? Councillor Mackay.
Yeah, just looking at your stats when you were talking about by 2025, percentage of people that are retired. Well, the start of the baby boomers in 2025 will be 66, or the end of the baby boomers. The start will be people born 1946 will be 80.
Yeah.
And then by 2035, the start of the end of the baby boomers will be 76, and the other people will be 90. So that changes. Everything changes after that.
Everything changes.
There'll be a lot of people not here.
That's right.
I'll be here, but a lot of people won't.
Me too.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
if you projected a couple more years,
Yeah.
it would be altogether different again.
It's altogether different again, but the magnitude of those values shrinks and shrinks and shrinks, right? So if you're talking about an actual number of individuals, so in your working class, there are 4,000 individuals, that 59%, 4,000 individuals. When we push it forward, it drops to 3,500, right?
Yeah.
So the senior group is going from 1,200 today to 2,000 in 10 years, but that value of individuals, the 2,000 seniors, we're not having 2,000 births. So the magnitude of the population, you will lose those bodies and not regain them.
But there's at some point, they must come back, right?
No.
The bulk of the baby boomers are going to be gone.
Yeah.
So it'll balance out like it normally would. If we didn't have the Second World War, we wouldn't have baby boomers.
That's correct.
So the peacetime people born in peacetime it would level out.
It's a steady line, but when it comes down to magnitude of the value of the number of individuals, that's where we get into the problems. If you're used to a tax base of so many households, that so many household number is going to shrink when the baby boomers achieve end of life. So that's what we're talking about.
Not that good of a achievement.
Because the birth rate is so low and the
Yeah.
retention of our youth is non-existent. Yeah, so that's where you're right. It will level out, but at a much lower value of physical number of bodies. Okay?
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. Councillor Olmsted, please.
Yeah, the one misconception about the numbers is that retirees don't benefit the community, when in fact we're attracting retirees to our community. They're building $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 homes on the water. They're contributing to our tax base. They're contributing to our local economy. They're buying goods and services. So that's the one misconception I don't like about the presentation, in that you're talking about workers only who are not contributing to a pension plan or old age security. And that's what it seems to be geared around. We want retirees coming to our community, because in my opinion, they're going to be a big economic driver for our community going forward. Because you're seeing people leave metro areas such as Toronto and Ottawa and across the country, where they're selling properties for $8, $9, $1 million, and they're coming and building these big, beautiful homes. Drive up and down the Ottawa River, and you'll see a $500,000 home go up, and these people are very happy to be part of our community.
Yeah.
That's the one misconception I don't like, is that you're really talking about workers and the workforce.
Yes.
When we really do want the aged population in our community.
Yeah, and I completely agree with your statement. Seniors are a hugely valuable part of every community, and that market is growing, and the ability to access that investment is a huge opportunity for any builder, residence owner, long-term care facility managers. All those positions will grow temporarily. And that is, you know, when we speak to our mentors at the federal level planning 50 years ahead, we know that those large homes still need to be purchased by somebody when those seniors move into long-term care facilities. So we have to do a good job at maintaining the labor force so that we can have great incomes to support the purchase of a $600,000 home in 20 years. And, you know, when those homes and properties will become available through that investment now. So I totally agree with you, and I hope I didn't downplay the value of senior citizens. I think I mentioned it specifically that newcomer senior citizens get together with our local senior citizens and play great roles at our civic centers as volunteers and support agents for our younger groups. So I hope that's not what the message you got, but certainly you're right. We are labor market focused because that's how you build sustainability. It doesn't mean we don't take advantage of the other assets that surround the labor force, but it means that we still have to keep the businesses that are here today. We know that there are organizations in Renfrew County now that are looking to move elsewhere because they can't find millwrights. How are we going to sustain that level of our economy while we support the senior citizen population? That's really the message, and it's not to defame the highly valuable market of the senior citizens. Thank you.
Mayor Johnson.
I agree with everybody here. We need more people. We need them of all age groups. Right. We need the people that are going to build, the people that are going to work. We need some qualified people. The industry that I'm in is construction. It's amazing in the last few years how hard it is to get employees. When you get a big project and you need to boost your employee base, it's very difficult. And we need to grow, and we need to support what will make us grow. I don't want to be in my retirement, Kathy and I looked at each other. I don't want to be the one being supported by two unless they're really wealthy. We have to think of our children's children. That's the position we're in now. We're not thinking of us. We're not thinking of our children as much as we are our grandchildren. That's when, unless we get people here that are willing to work and to promote the growth that we require, then we're just going to sit stagnant.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you as well. Okay, next we've got a draft bylaw use of unopened road allowance, Magnesium Road. Christine?
Yeah, I've included the resolution back from December 16th, if we can remember back to before Christmas festivities, where I was directed to draft a bylaw so that Ontario Power Generation could enter into an agreement with the township to access the road allowance at the end of Magnesium Road to facilitate logging on their property. So I went back and found examples of the past and a whole legal file of what should be included. So I've drafted this, and I'd like to bring it forward to be passed at the January 20th meeting. But certainly it's just in draft form right now. If anyone has any comments or changes, this will be, we've got lots of time now. I can fix it up and bring it back to you, but it is coming January 20th.
Councillor Jackson?
Just one question with regards to the insurance of the unopened road allowance whenever they're working on it, that they cover their own insurance liability, and it's not the liability of the township. That's the only concern I have. And it says provide liability insurance as satisfactory. So as long as we get a copy, they provide a copy of it to the municipality would be great.
And $5 million, I believe now, is the standard.
Yeah.
Councillor Mackay?
Just wondering on that, just for my own information, that road allowance is in through farmland, and it's a road allowance, I know that. But what do they do about livestock, or when they're building that? Do they have to build fences, or no? Just ask.
There is a survey requirement, though, to make sure that they don't veer off the beaten path is what I was gonna say, but off the unopened road allowance onto someone's field. So they have to make sure that,
So the landowner, he puts up his own fence.
and they'll be notified. We have a procedure to notify the adjoining landowners, et cetera.
Okay.
And then the timber that's taken off, we'd have to figure out how much we're talking about, but the standard is to offer that to adjacent landowners. Sort of for their trouble because things are being disrupted.
Anything further? Okay, that concludes the Economic Development Committee. And I'll pass it over to Chair Charlene Jackson of the Corporate Services Committee.
We're taking a couple minutes. Short couple of minutes.